The African Champions League. Now that the African Cup of Nations is over, time to shift all attention onto our domestic club scene. And this weekend is the final match day of the group stages of the CAF Champions League. After this weekend, we're going to know which two teams advance from each group and go on to the quarterfinals, where really then the competition starts. As the Mamelodi Sundowns coach Rulani Mokoena said, this competition really starts in the quarterfinals. So let's talk about the CAF Champions League. Let's talk about each of the groups, some of our observations, and maybe let's preview this weekend's action. So then 2 or 3 days from now, we can recap it all once we know who's going to be playing who in the quarterfinals. In Group A, we have Mamelodi Sundowns and TP Mazembe, who have run away with the group. Those two sides are going to be playing one another to determine who's going to be group winners. Mamelodi Sundowns, as we know earlier this year, won the African Football League, the inaugural edition. Remember, FIFA's edition of the African Super League. Well, it's not really FIFA's. I guess it's a private entity, but FIFA were really behind the creation of the African Football League. So what's new with Mamelodi Sundowns since they won the African Football League? Sundowns since then, until now in the DStv Premiership, are undefeated. 13 wins, 3 draws, 0 losses. They still have the tactical genius Rulani Mokoena as a coach. But if you speak to people in South Africa and maybe people that know Sundowns pretty decently, they're going to tell you that despite the good results, maybe stylistically, it hasn't been as impressive as they would have liked. And that's okay. I think as Mokoena said, prior to this press conference against, I gotta get my cat out of here. Prior to this press conference against TP Mazembe, for him, the Champions League starts after the quarterfinals. He also, I think, spoke very interestingly about football heritage. As you know, this is a conversation that we've been having really for the last 18 months with Sundowns, because they would always get to the quarterfinals or the semifinals and then fail, whether it was to Petro de Luanda, whether against Simba Casablanca. And generally, they were mistakes that were very avoidable, own goals or goalkeeping errors. And, you know, when you have a coach like Mokoena who drills the X's and O's, drills the minute details prior to every match, and then you concede goals like that, you start thinking these are mental mistakes from the players. And how do you reduce that, or how do you capitalize on that? Usually it's the intangibles. It's things like, you know, the atmosphere that's created by the supporters, the pressure that the players can either handle or they can't handle, and so on and so forth. So Sundowns, I believe, only lost one match. Yeah, only lost one match, and that was to TP Mazembe in the group stages. Now, why is that interesting? That's interesting because if you've ever watched a match in Lubumbashi, where TP Mazembe play in the Congo, in the Katanga province of DR Congo, you'll know that it's probably one of the most intense atmospheres that is not in North Africa. You know, in North Africa, you can create those great atmospheres that we see in Casablanca, or in Algiers even. But TP Mazembe, I love that they don't have a running track in their stadium. You know, they get right up there, and you can feel the supporters cheering their team on. So for Sundowns to go there and lose, and Mokoena say in the pre-match press conference that was the most difficult match that they played in the group stages, and that was maybe one of the matches where they didn't dominate as much as they should have. I think that's a good warning shot for for Mamelodi Sundowns. But still, I think with the African Football League triumph of earlier on in the year, with South Africa showing so much mental strength in the African Cup of Nations, with so many of those players coming from Sundowns, I think the arrow is pointing up for Sundowns. I think this generation of players have shown that they can handle those kinds of atmospheres and they can step up to the big occasion. And on top of that, they sign 4 very interesting players in the winter window: Matthias Esquivel and Tashreeq Matthews. Tashreeq Matthews, I think, is a former, very highly talented youngster who I think went to Dortmund at a young age. Very, very exciting winger, maybe, or attacking player. Matthias Esquivel is going to slot in midfield, who one of my friends said maybe could, bypass Marcelo Allende. Zuko Dunielwa, hope I got that correct, is a sort of right back. I guess that's going to be competing with Koliso Mudau. and Tembenkosi Lorch, who we all know as the Orlando Pirates veteran, who has a lot of experience and I think can bring that kind of experience to Sundowns. So for Sundowns to already be undefeated in the league and then to bring in all of those players, that's a signal of intent where we're not satisfied with the DSTV Premiership. No, we want to win the Champions League and perhaps we want to create a team and build a team for the FIFA Club World Cup. Mazembe, I haven't watched too much of, so I'm not going to try to speak about them for too much. But again, the atmosphere is something that we have to talk about, and also I think they have a great young attacking sort of trio or four players, especially like the Malian player Sheikh Fofana, who scored so many important goals for Mazembe in the Champions League. Joel Beya scored a lot of goals this season in the Champions League. Glody Lekonza, another player that scored a lot of important goals for TP Mazembe. So I really do like their attacking players, and I think that they'll be really important for Mazembe down the line. One final point about Group A, and this is a point that's going to extend to the rest of really the groups, is that look at how many goals conceded by Mazembe and Sundowns. Mazembe only conceded one goal, and that was away from home to Pyramids FC, where they lost 1-0. That was the first match of the group stages. Mamelodi Sundowns only conceded one goal, and that was to TP Mazembe, away from home as well. So what you're going to see throughout the groups is that this edition of the CAF Champions League is really rewarding teams that defend well. There's only one team that bucks the trend, but everybody else from the teams that are going to be advancing to the next round, they defend very well. And that's something to keep in mind once we get to the quarterfinals. Group B, ASEC Mimosa are already through. And then the second qualifying the second team that will qualify is either Simba from Tanzania or Wydad Casablanca from Morocco. ASEC are already through. Let's talk about ASEC. ASEC, what were we just talking about? Strong defense. ASEC have, I think, around 4 clean sheets. They've only conceded 1 goal as well, and that was in the first match of the group stages as well against Simba, and that was on a penalty kick. And their strength is Wanlu Koulibaly and Ibrahim Trabi. They're 2 center halves who are very, very, they play well together. Wanlu Koulibaly is more of the passing player that can play it out from behind, whereas Ibrahim Trabi is more of like the get stuck in, I'm going to go up and meet you for the aerial duel. I'm going to tackle you and take a yellow card. Much more physical. And so ASEC Mimosa defending very well, and that's their strength. If they concede another goal this group stage, it's because their last match is a dead rubber. They're already the only team so far that's guaranteed to advance as the first place team into the quarterfinals. Let's talk about Simba and Wydad. Simba had a great run from, I believe, 2017 to 2020, where they won 4 straight Tanzanian Premier League titles. Since then, the last 2 to 3 years, I believe, have been won by their arch rivals, Young Africans, Yanga. And when you talk to people in Tanzania, what they tell you is that Simba are not as well run as they used to be, perhaps. That they still have a great team, they still have great players, but if they are, for example, chasing one player that Yanga is also chasing, Yanga, they can secure that player's services much faster than Simba. And prime example is the Ivorian winger, who we're going to talk a lot more about, Pacom Zuzwa, from Young Africans, who apparently was also a target of Simba's, but Simba took too long, they dragged their feet, and they've been a lot less efficient with their transfer signings. So, for example, bringing back a big name like Luis Mikison from Mozambique, the player that they used to have, that they sold to Ahly, that they brought back, he's been very disappointing compared to his first stint. So because of the disappointments, because they lost 5-1 to Yanga in that crazy East African derby earlier on in the league season, they got rid of their coach, Robertinho, and they brought in the Algerian coach, Abdelhak Ben Chikha, who won the CAF Confederation Cup with USM of Algiers last season. The thing with Abdelhak Ben Chikha, he's not really a tactical coach, he's much more of a man manager. And as a result, we're still not sure if that's what Simba needed, if they needed a young attacking coach or if they need this kind of man manager. Maybe the man manager is going to do them well in the Champions League if they can make it to the quarterfinals. But overall, the way the club's been run, I think they've been a little bit too wasteful with their resources. And now they have a huge match against Jwaneng Galaxy from Botswana, who have shocked many people, who got a win against Wydad Casablanca, for example. But Simba should win, and as long as they better the result of Wydad Casablanca, Simba will be on in the next round. As for Wydad are playing against ASEC. ASEC are already through, as we mentioned, so this is a dead rubber match for them. I expect them to really turn over a lot of their players, maybe not start all of their starters. And Wydad started the season okay. Remember, they finished the final in the African Football League against Sundowns. But then their president of the club, Said Nasiri, he got locked up. He's been accused of being involved in a drug scheme in Morocco. And as a result, he's been locked up. And since then, there's been a lot of uncertainty around the club. For example, I think immediately after he was locked up, I think they drew or lost the next 4 or 5 matches. So you can imagine that took quite a toll on the players. They lost to Jwaneng Galaxy earlier on in the year, as mentioned. And that's really what got rid of their first coach, Adel Ramzi. But they bring in Fawzi Benzerti, the Tunisian coach, to be the coach of Wydad Casablanca. And if you don't know who Fawzi Benzerti is, he's a legend of African football. Anybody that knows him or that has covered him for a little bit has an anecdote that is funny to tell. He's basically this guy. He's very short. I'm short, but he's shorter than me. And he's very fiery as well. He can insult you by all names under the sun. He's going to swear at you, insult your bloodline. He's going to smoke like a chimney. But he's somebody that loves football, And so what he does is he's won everywhere. As soon as he gets hold of a club, he gets great short-term results. So he'll first of all work them really, really hard physically. He'll make players. I've heard former players from the 1980s, to be fair, tell me that he had them put sandbags on their back and run up and down the hills. He'll have teams solid defensively, and again, very much of a man manager. If you can withstand being coached tough, you're gonna like him because he has a big heart. He's like that grumpy grandpa. But if you can withstand the criticism and you can give it 100% for him, he'll recognize that and you'll end up having a great relationship with him. So Fawzi Benzerti, legend of African football, he managed to get Wydad Casablanca back into this group stages, but now they need this result against ASEC Mimosa, and they need to hope that Simba trip up against Jwaneng Galaxy. So it's not looking good for them. It's a long shot, but if Wydad make it onto the next round with Fawzi Benzerti, now with maybe some stability after their president, Said Nasiri's been in jail for a few months now, maybe Wydad can stage a run, but it doesn't look good for them this season. Let's move on to Group C. Group C, Petro de Luanda and Esperance de Tunis have Petro de Luanda have qualified from Angola. And again, let's go back to that first theme. What did we say? Teams that can defend well are being rewarded in this Champions League. Petro de Luanda have played 5 matches. They've scored 3 goals. And yet they're first with 9 points in their group. They've conceded 0 goals. Their defending back line is so good. They have players like Tocarnero who started matches for Angola at the AFCON. They have players like Quinito, a center half, who didn't start for Angola at the AFCON, but who could have. Players like Ignacio Miguel, who's the other fullback, Tocanero left back. Ignacio Miguel is the center half alongside Quinito. But they also have the right back, who I'm blanking on his name right now. What's his name? I'm blanking on his name right now. Eddie Alfonso is the right back. So they really have like 4 defenders who are part of the Angolan national team setup, and who we know Angola did really well at the AFCON. They have some interesting wingers like Gilberto, who was great at the AFCON for Angola as well. But their strength is really going to be defending well and making sure that they don't give up any goals, especially away from home. So once they get into that quarterfinals and the 2-leg knockouts, that's a really advantageous way to play your football. Espérance de Tunis are one of the sides that I think are the most uncertain for me. You know, if you've been following the African Champions League over the last 2 or 3 years, there have been 4 sides that have been consistently the top. Mamelodi Sundowns from South Africa, Wydad Casablanca from Morocco, Ahly from Egypt, and Espérance de Tunis from Tunisia. Sundowns, we said, are just as good as last year, or even better now with some of the signings that they made. We're going to talk about Ahly. Wydad Casablanca, we said, have decreased a bit. Espérance de Tunis, I can't put my finger on it. I don't think they've decreased. I don't think they've improved. They're just different. They practically changed all of their midfield and attack. They've brought in players, 2 Brazilians, Rodrigo Rodriguez and Jan Sass. Rodrigo Rodriguez is like a true number 9 that can do everything. He can hold the ball up. He can play face to goal. Jan Sass is this left-footed winger that's great technically. He was playing, I think, at Wellington Phoenix in Oceania. But really, really good player. I like him a lot. Their midfield has changed completely with Roger Ahulu, a very experienced defensive midfielder, playing as a defensive midfielder. Hussam Tqa, for example, as one of their number 8s, their shuttling number 8s, and their 8s now can score. They can really shoot from a distance. Zakaria Al-Ayeb is the other number 8 next to Hussam Tqa that can really put the ball on the goal. So many options from the wing position, players like Oussama Bouguerra, Hussam Adin Rasha, the Algerian that they signed from Turkey. So I'm droning on and on, but my point is that they changed almost everything from the midfield and the attack. And as a result, they've been a little bit up and down, and I can't really put my finger on it. I think they've improved, and I think they're going to be sneakily good. I think this could be a team that maybe we could have like a Sundowns versus Espérance final, but I'm not 100% sure simply because everything is new. And even their coach, Miguel Cardozo, is kind of new. A Portuguese coach that had spells everywhere. They were kind of catastrophic everywhere except for one club, Rio Ave in Portugal. But everywhere else, he wasn't really great. So we'll see about Espérance de Tunis. But I expect them, they play El Hilal this weekend. They have a 3-point advantage against El Hilal. So as long as they don't lose 2-0, then they should be fine. Finally, let's talk about the last group, Al Ahly and Young Africans. What were we talking about? Again, I'm going to keep coming back to this. Teams that defend well are rewarded. Al Ahly have only conceded 1 goal. As I'm talking, they're actually playing against Young Africans. I believe they're winning 2-0. But so far, they've only conceded 1 goal. Young Africans are the one team that bucked the exception. They've conceded 5 goals in the group stages. Now that they're losing 2-0 to Al Ahly, they've actually conceded 7 goals. But they've scored 9. I really, really like watching Young Africans. They're so exciting to watch. And their real great win came against Sierra Belouizdad, the Algerian champions, just last week on the 24th of February, where they scored 4 goals and they beat CRB 4-0. Young Africans, they have this coach, Miguel Gamondi, who's like really, he's like one of those coaches that lives and dies by his philosophy. He doesn't care about defending. He wants to play free-flowing attacking football, and whatever happens, happens. And they have the players to do it. Players like, a Kennedy Musonda, who's like a very safe option. But for me, the 2 players that are the most exciting, in my opinion, throughout these group stages, Stefan Azizki, former ASEC Mimosa player from Ivory Coast, who is like a number 10 or an attacking midfielder, left-footed, that strikes the ball so well. He can score so many goals, or he can give so many assists. Just like not a very dynamic player, but if he's in and around 25 yards from the goal, he can be a threat. The other player, Pacom Zuzua, I think this has been one of my favorite players. This has been my favorite player to watch during the group stages, and he might even be my player of the group stages. He's a player that, a supreme dribbler, so much explosiveness. You get him on the ball, he can skip past 2, 3, 4 players and then score or assist. And in my opinion, it's just been so fun to watch. Players like this are like Cavaliers, they're Mavericks, but that's what we watch football for, right? And so Young Africans, they beat Simba, as we mentioned, 5-1. They beat CRB 4-0. They have that potential, but they can also concede a lot of goals. And that's, I think, a style of play that's not really conducive to the African Champions League that I think they're going to struggle with. However, they're going to be fun to watch. So Young Africans and Ahly are through. My prediction is that Petro de Luanda and Esperance de Tunis are going to go through, and ASEC Mimosa and Simba are going to go through over Wydad. And finally, Mazembe and Sundowns, who are already through. That's, I think, going to be the quarterfinals. Let me know if you agree or not. And then once the the group stages are over, and once you have the draw, we're going to go through these matchups one by one. But overall, this competition is rewarding defending, and if you've noticed, only 2 North African sides will be going on to the quarterfinals if my predictions stand true. Just Al Ahly and Esperance de Tunis. That's something that is completely different to the last 6 or 7 years, where we've had at times, like two clubs from each country going through. So maybe that's going to be another conversation for another time, maybe as we preview the quarterfinals. But the North African nations have not necessarily done well in this CAF Champions League. So let me know who you're looking forward to watching, what have been your main observations during the group stages of the CAF Champions League. And we'll break down the quarterfinals as they approach. Thank you, and we'll speak soon. Peace.